An ex-gamekeeper has been found guilty of blasting a former colleague to death in a brutal ambush driven by sheer malice. 77-year-old David Campbell faced justice for the murder of retired estate worker 65-year-old Brian Lowe, who was murdered in cold blood as he walked his dog on a remote country track near Aberfeldy in Perthshire. Jurors returned their verdict at the High Court in Glasgow following a 3-week trial in which Campbell claimed he had an alibi for the February 16, 2024 slaughter. We told her Mr Lowe was found dead the following day by locals who feared he had suffered a cardiac arrest. An ambulance was summoned, but there was nothing that could be done to save Mr Lowe, who was cold and motionless with his pet Millie close by. A police officer and a detective were next to arrive, and DC Mark Chance mistakenly deemed the death to be non-suspicious, even though Mr Lowe's face was covered in blood. It was only 6 days later when police realised he had been blasted by a shotgun killer who stood around 19 metres away when he fired the fatal shot.
Around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday 17th of February 2024, the body of Brian was discovered alongside his black Labrador in the Patilly area on the outskirts of town. Emergency services attended and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Mr Lowe's death was initially assessed as being non-suspicious and medical related, but following a medical examination it was established he had injuries consistent with being fatally shot.
Campbell claimed he was at home watching TV when the killer struck, but today jurors returned a guilty verdict based on purely circumstantial evidence. Jurors were told throughout the trial no forensic evidence was found linking Campbell to the scene, but they were persuaded by the Crown's case, which included evidence Campbell had switched off his home CCTV system and placed duct tape over his doorbell camera. The court heard from prosecutor Greg Farrell, who gave his closing speech on Friday. Mr Farrell told the jurors Mr Lowe had been blasted to death on a farm track while walking his black lab Millie near his home in Aberfeldy by a man motivated by sheer malice. He put it to jurors the retired groundsman's life was extinguished in seconds or perhaps minutes when he was gunned down by Campbell. Mr Farrell said, having disabled his home's CCTV system and taped over his only doorbell camera, the accused David Campbell, wearing a hooded jacket and carrying a bag containing a shotgun over his shoulder, took his wife's bike from his home address up the hill to the Leafy Lane, and there he used a shotgun to shoot Brian Lowe, striking him in the face, chest and neck, and left him for dead. He said Mr Lowe was happily walking his dog when he was left to die on that track alone, as the shotgun blast killed him within minutes or perhaps seconds. He added that Mr Lowe stood no chance, unarmed and unaware, as he was the subject of what he described as a brazen and brutal and planned execution in a cowardly ambush in a rural spot motivated by nothing other than sheer malice. Mr Farrell told jurors Campbell had harboured a hatred of Mr Lowe for years, believing the deceased had planted poison in his property in a bid to set him up, while police were investigating wildlife crimes on the estate. He added this was no accident. David Campbell hunted Brian Lowe down like he was a quarry. The only person with the means, motivation and opportunity to carry out this murder was David Campbell. Jurors were earlier shown a minute of agreed evidence in the case. They were instructed to accept as fact investigators had found no forensic evidence linking the accused to the death scene. A footprint found on Mr Lowe's trouser leg close to his right knee was also detected, but footwear impressions later taken from emergency workers and civilians who found Mr Lowe's body and the accused himself failed to find a match. Specialist sniffer dogs with the ability to detect smells linked to firearms and ammunition were also brought in to search Campbell's car, home and another property owned in the town, but it was agreed in evidence that they did not identify anything. The Crown withdrew all charges on the indictment apart from the most serious allegation of murder. Judge Lord Scott thereafter formally acquitted Campbell of allegations he'd threatened to shoot people, had an air rifle without holding a licence, and claims he had attempted to pervert the course of justice. Lord Scott told the jurors they were no longer required to reach a verdict on 7 of the original 8 charges, adding any evidence you have heard in relation to these other charges can still be taken into account. He then told Campbell, I formally acquit you of these charges. And today jurors returned a verdict of guilty, meaning Campbell now faces the prospect of spending the rest of his life in jail.